Welcome back. This is Crime Uncoded, and this is The Dark Files, Compilation series. Sometimes the world leaves us with stories that don't quite fit. Strange disappearances, unanswered calls for help, puzzles lost to time. Tonight, we're diving into a handful of those lingering mysteries, each one whispering a question that still has no clear answer. There's a place in Vermont people whisper about. Not a big city, not a famous landmark. Just woods, old roads, and a town that mostly faded away. They call it the Bennington Triangle. Between 1945 and 1950, 5 people disappeared from that area. Different ages, different lives. Same silence afterward. I'm going to tell you their stories. I'm not promising answers. I'm promising details you may not have heard. I'll walk the ridgelines with you. We'll look at the facts. We'll ask the obvious questions. And when the facts run out, we'll listen to the space where they used to be. This is based on historical reports, local lore, and the way small towns remember the missing. Keep your mind open. Keep your filter on. We're not sensationalizing pain. We're trying to understand it. Glastonbury and the map that forgets. When you look at a map, the Bennington Triangle isn't drawn as a triangle. It's a word someone made up later to describe a cluster of vanishings around Glastonbury Mountain and the town of Bennington. Glastonbury itself is almost a ghost. Once a logging and mining spot, its buildings crumbled over time. Roads go in and then vanish. Rocks take the place of foundations. The land there is steep in spots, blanketed in firs, and full of boulders with moss. Streams cut through the hollows. Weather moves fast. Fog comes from nowhere. You don't get lost only once. You do it a few times before you know how to survive. Midshipman Midi River, 1945. Midi Rivers was a man of the woods. He guided hunters. He knew trails most people did not. On a fall day in 1945, he left with a group and walked ahead. At some point, the group noticed he was gone. They found a shell casing near where he was last seen. They found his hat later, alone. No one ever found the rest. When an experienced man disappears, you notice a different kind of worry. Not the panic of someone who wasn't prepared. The worry that the land did something it had no business doing. Rivers didn't make rookie mistakes. He should have known the easy paths. Yet he vanished. His family waited. The town looked. There were trackers and hunters and neighbors with lanterns. They came back with nothing but silence. People in town told stories after that. Some said coyotes. Some said an accident. Some said a stranger. All of them had the same blank face when the conversation ended. When someone like Rivers disappears, you have 2 options. You can focus on natural causes, or you can accept that maybe a pattern is forming. And if you accept the pattern, you begin to look for all the small common threads that might tie these disappearances together. When the woods take a guide, you stop assuming you understand how the land works. Paula Weldon, 1946. Paula Weldon was 20 years old. She was a student at Bennington College. On a chilly February afternoon in 1946, She decided to go for a short walk near campus. She put on a bright red coat. That red jacket is part of why people remember her. A red spark in winter. Reports say she told friends she'd be back soon. She never returned. Searchers found some of her belongings. They found torn fabric. They found prints that led to the road. They found witnesses who thought they'd seen her walking toward the trailhead. They did not find Paula. The FBI checked records. Locals held vigils. Time went on. No one could explain how a college student on a common trail in daylight simply ceased to be found. There's an angle here that's painful to explain, but important. Young people sometimes make choices that place them in danger without realizing it. But Paula's case doesn't read like a foolish mistake. It reads like a blank where a life should be. Families needed closure. The college needed answers. The town learned a new way to be cautious. I think about the red coat and the way colors carry across distance. Bright clothes are supposed to help. But a red coat can fade into sunset or into a stand of dark spruce. And if someone meets trouble quickly, there may be no time for a cry. The best we can do is list what we know and ask why it didn't add up to a find. A bright coat shouldn't be a final detail, and yet sometimes it is. James Tedford, 1949. James Tedford was a World War II veteran. He got a bus from Bennington to go home to the soldiers' home. He sat on the bus. He fell asleep. When the bus stopped at the next scheduled point, he was gone. His belongings were in the seat. His jacket and hat were there. The ticket in his pocket. Nothing else. People catch buses every day. They sleep. They wake. They get off. You don't vanish between stops with your coat and hat still on the seat. That detail is the kind that stretches a case into the uncanny. It asks, where did a man go who was literally sitting down a minute ago? There were searches. The bus driver swore he had seen nothing. Passengers remembered nothing unusual. The bus had no sign of forced exit. And yet, Tedford wasn't where he should have been. Some suggested foul play. Some suggested a mental episode. Others pointed to possible confusion or a transfer to another ride. None of the theories fit every fact. In quiet moments, I think of liminal places. Bus seats, train cars, hotel lobbies. People move through them like shadows might. They are public, but not watched. They are where disappearance can feel most normal, and therefore most invisible. When a man vanishes from a bus seat, the ordinary becomes impossible to believe. Paul Jeepson, 1950. Paul Jeepson was 8. One afternoon, his parents left him in a truck while they did chores. Paul wandered off. The adults noticed later. They called for him. Bloodhounds picked up his scent. The dogs led searchers to a road. The scent stopped. That's terrifying in a simple way. For years, people argued about whether Paul got into a car. Some thought a local driver might have taken him. Others said he stepped into a hidden sinkhole. The more serious view is this. Children are both resilient and vulnerable. They can disappear in rural spaces in ways adults don't expect. A small body can be hidden by brush, carried, or simply misread when found. The family lived with a question that never allowed rest. In a community, the disappearance of a child breaks the sense of safety in a different way than an adult vanishing. Adults can be careless. Children are supposed to be protected. Paul's absence left an ache that shaped how the town watched its young. I want to highlight the scent trail image because it's so stark. A dog straining forward, a line through the leaf litter, and then nothing. It's as if something else closed the book with a hand. A trail that ends without an answer is a small horror we carry with us when we sleep. Freda Langanger, 1950. In the same year, Freda Langanger went for a walk and didn't return. Unlike the others, her body turned up eventually near a stream. The coroner said it looked like an accident. She had fallen. The months between her disappearance and when she was found stretched a community thin. Seasonal weather changed evidence. Snow melted. The stream moved things around. It's important to handle Freda's case carefully. It's an example of how nature can explain a death and still leave a mystery about why it happened. When a body is found after months, decomposition, water movement, and scavenging can change the scene. That makes it hard to know whether there was another hand involved. Was it just a bad step? Or did someone push? The record didn't say for sure. What we do learn is that not every disappearance is a true mystery. Some are tragic accidents. Still, the timing and the fact that Freda's case sits among unsolved vanishings magnified its impact. People prefer neat explanations. Reality rarely offers them. An answered case doesn't always feel like an answer when it sits in a neighborhood of silence. Looking for patterns. When you put these cases side by side, you look for lines that connect them. Different ages, different walks of life, a student, a veteran, a boy, a guide, a woman. The time window is small, 5 years. The radius is tight. That's why some people thought a predator was moving through the area. But predators follow patterns, and they leave traces. The police of the time reported few solid leads that pointed to an outsider systematically taking people. Other ideas came up. Some pointed to abandoned mine shafts. A man could fall into a pit no one knew about. Others posited stray animals or freak accidents. You'll also hear local folklore, strange lights, mysterious figures, a bad winter wind. Folklore fills gaps. It offers a narrative when the facts end. But folklore can also create false comfort. It can shape what investigators pay attention to and what they ignore. For an investigator, the first move is to separate the real from the resonant. Which facts are repeated by credible witnesses? Which details are only in tavern talk years later? That's where we stand with the Bennington cases. Partial facts, real grief, and a field of possible causes that none fit perfectly. Finding a pattern is useful. Finding the wrong pattern is worse. The role of search and rescue. Search techniques in the 1940s and 1950s were basic by today's standards. No GPS, no drones. People relied on boots, lanterns, hounds, and local knowledge. You had volunteers who walked in grids the old way, marking where they'd been, calling out names into the trees, and hoping a shout would meet an answer. That made searches slow and fragile. Weather could erase footprints overnight. Snow could hide bedding. Streams could take traces downstream. Think about scent. Bloodhounds help. But wind, rain, and wildlife can confuse them. And remember, a missing person in a wooded valley may be in a place dogs can't reach. Mines, cliffs, and cold water are unforgiving. A search can be thorough and still fail. That reality frustrated townspeople. It made some suspicious of the official accounting. It made others angry at chance. Modern methods changed the game. Today, we have infrared imaging, satellites, and cell pings. Back then, the absence of technology meant the difference between closure and permanent question for families. That's an important part of the Bennington story. Time itself as an adversary. When your tools are old and the land is patient, the land usually wins the first round. A small town remembers missing people differently than a big city does. Stories pass around kitchen tables and on church steps. A missing person becomes a text in the community ledger. The names stay longer there than a newsprint. For Bennington, the disappearances became part of local talk. They shaped how parents watched kids and how hikers planned routes. There's a social cost to not knowing. The families keep living. The town keeps working. Yet every picnic and every holiday can carry that silent space. People build rituals to manage uncertainty. Memorials, vigil days, quiet markers in cemeteries. Those rituals don't always show up on official records, but they matter. They're the human side of a missing person case. I met someone once who grew up near Glastonbury. She told me how her grandmother would say, "Don't walk after dark, even on the main road." You can hear practical safety in that. You can hear grief's echo too. Communities use rules to hold the loose ends of trauma. When a place keeps losing people, the whole town changes the way it opens its doors. Folklore fills the void. In Bennington, tales grew, strange lights on peaks, unseen figures, and whispers about cursed ground. Those stories did what myths always do. They turned anxiety into images. They made fear easier to talk about. But they also bred distraction. A legend can push real leads into the background. If someone is convinced an invisible force took people, they may not look for the obvious. One reason to dig into the folklore is to understand the culture around the missing. But the work of solving cases is not about mood, it's about detail. It's about footprints and weather records and who was where. Folklore is the last thing we turn to, not the first. A story that comforts can also be a story that blinds. It's easy to reduce the missing to an outline. Age, date, place. That's efficient, but it's not human. Paula was a student with friends and plans. Tedford had spent years serving his country. Paul was a boy with scraped knees and a backyard. Midi was a man who guided others through forests. Freda was a neighbor someone would miss at the market. Each life had texture, jobs, siblings, favorite meals. Sometimes those facts are lost among the mystery. So where does that leave us? We've seen 5 cases in a tight window. We've seen natural explanations that cover some facts and fail on others. We've seen the limits of mid-century search. We've seen folklore that both comforts and confuses. We have witnesses, partial trails, and the geography that hides more than that gives. If I had to weigh odds, I'd say the most likely causes are a combination. Misadventure for some, accidental death for one, and for others, we simply lack evidence. The idea of a single malevolent actor moving through the hills is tempting. It makes for neat storytelling, but neat stories aren't always true. The cases don't fit perfectly into one pattern. They fit into multiple small tragedies that happened in one place. That's worse in a way. It means no single action would have prevented them all. I don't have all the answers. I have names, dates, and plausible causes. I have a town that remembers. I have a map that doesn't show every hole. The Bennington Triangle remains a place where the line between human error and the unforgiving land blurs. On March 16, 1962, Flying Tiger Line Flight 739 prepared for departure from Guam. The Lockheed L-1049 Super Constellation was a proven workhorse, its triple-tail silhouette gleaming against a humid Pacific night. Inside sat 93 U.S. soldiers, 3 South Vietnamese officers, and 11 civilian crew. 107 souls expecting a straightforward hop to the Philippines. None of them knew they were boarding a case history's strangest flight. The passengers were not ordinary tourists. Officially, they were en route to Saigon for a classified assignment in Vietnam. Flying Tiger, a civilian cargo carrier contracted by the military, handled their transport. The route, Guam to Clark Air Base, then onward, was routine, with well-trained crew and favorable weather. Yet the secrecy meant few knew their exact itinerary. Even the men themselves received only partial information. Secrecy, it seems, became the first shadow cast over Flight 739. At 12:30 a.m., Captain Gregory Thomas Adams guided the Super Constellation down the runway. Witnesses described a smooth, confident takeoff. Over the headset, Guam Tower cleared them to climb toward a moonlit corridor of sky. There were no signs of distress as they leveled off, heading east of the Philippines. Within minutes, the plane slipped beyond radar range, into a void that would define its story. At 1:22 a.m., radio operators at Manila expected a scheduled position report. It never came. They called back repeatedly, cycling through frequencies. Nothing. Flight 739 was officially missing. In aviation, silence is ominous. Even mechanical issues are usually broadcast in clipped, urgent messages. Here, there was no distress call, no mayday, only quiet air. Like a light switching off mid-sentence, the aircraft seemed to vanish between one heartbeat and the next. By dawn, a massive search was underway. U.S. Air Force planes fanned out over 200,000 square miles of ocean between Guam and the Philippines. Ships from nearby naval bases scanned for oil slicks or debris. Crews expected at least fragments, a life raft, insulation, a glint of aluminum. Days passed with nothing. The water stayed clear, as if the Super Constellation had slipped beneath an invisible lid. The Pacific doesn't usually hide everything, one rescuer later said. Not like that. As news spread, reports trickled in. A Liberian tanker crew swore they saw a flash high above the waves the same night. A streak, then an expanding fireball. They marked the coordinates, but planes scouring the area found only open sea. Was it Flight 739 breaking apart midair, or a meteor flaring in the tropics? Investigators logged the account carefully, but the data stopped there. No wreckage, no oil. The testimony hovered, suspended like the fireball itself, casting light without revealing what burned. Investigators reviewed the aircraft's history. The Super Constellation had logged thousands of hours and had been inspected before takeoff. Flying Tiger mechanics reported no major faults, only a minor fuel leak fixed in Guam. Could an unseen crack or fatigue fracture have doomed the plane? Aviation engineers admitted it was possible, but mid-air breakups usually leave floating fragments. Not even a scrap surfaced. A hidden flaw is persuasive, until the ocean's emptiness pushes the theory back into doubt. Because the passengers were military, speculation shifted towards sabotage. Some whispered about explosives hidden in baggage, or sabotage linked to the escalating conflict in Southeast Asia. But there was no evidence of infiltration on Guam, and no intelligence hinting at an attack. Still, families noted the mission's secrecy, and how quickly authorities released only minimal statements. When facts vanish, suspicion rushes to fill the void. While officials argued over causes, families clung to hope. Parents scanned headlines. Wives wrote letters to editors demanding answers. Memorial services were held without remains. Flying Tiger Line, meanwhile, offered condolences but could not explain how an aircraft, its crew, and nearly 100 soldiers could evaporate on a calm March night. For those left behind, uncertainty became a wound that refused to heal. Over the years, theories multiplied. Some blamed a catastrophic fuel-air explosion in the center tank. Others imagined an onboard fire starting near the galley. But each hypothesis ran into the same wall. No debris, no oil slick, not a single life vest. Even in deep seas, large wrecks usually leave clues. The silence of the ocean felt intentional, as if it swallowed evidence on purpose. Former servicemen later shared odd details. A hurried flight schedule, unusual cargo, orders not to discuss the route. Some wondered if Flight 739 had strayed into hostile airspace, or was diverted to a clandestine base. No records ever confirmed such stories, yet they persist in veteran circles. Whispered memories that refuse to fade. Sometimes unofficial voices echo longer than any official report. Decades on, relatives and historians keep the memory alive. A granite monument in Vermont lists all names, overlooking quiet fields far from the Pacific. Each March, flowers appear, placed by hands that never saw the wreckage, but refused to let the story drift away. In the absence of answers, remembrance becomes its own form of justice. And that's the mystery of Flying Tiger Line Flight 739, a plane that lifted into the night and never returned. The Pacific holds its truth, but families, pilots, and researchers still search the archives and the sea, unwilling to let the trail grow cold. It's the height of World War II. The skies over the Pacific are tense. Enemy subs lurk below. And up above, a simple patrol blimp carries 2 men on what should be a routine flight. But then, they vanish. Completely. The blimp comes back alone, drifting like a ghost. No signs of struggle, no bodies. Just questions that echo through the years. This is the story of the L-8, the Ghost Blimp, a case that makes you wonder about the thin line between duty and disaster, how two lives can disappear in broad daylight. Let's go through it, one moment at a time. Back in 1942, America was deep in the fight. Pearl Harbor had happened just months before. Japanese subs were spotted off the California coast. They even shelled an oil field near Santa Barbara. The Navy needed eyes in the sky. That's where blimps came in. These weren't the big zeppelins from old newsreels. They were smaller, non-rigid, filled with helium. The L-class, like L-8, came from Goodyear, repurposed for war. They patrolled the shores, looking for substitutes, dropping depth charges if needed. L-8 was based at Moffett Field, but on August 16th it launched from Treasure Island in San Francisco Bay, a man-made spot in the water. The blimp was reliable, over 1,000 flights without trouble. Armed with 2 depth charges and a machine gun, it could float for hours. Quiet, hard to spot from below. War changes people. The constant watch, the fear of attack. It wears on the mind. These pilots weren't just flying, they were guardians. One slip and lives could be lost, including their own. Makes you think about the weight of that responsibility. Up there, alone. Ernest DeWitt Cody was the pilot. Lieutenant. Just 27. Graduated from the Naval Academy in 1938. He knew his stuff. Experienced with airships. Engaged to be married. A steady guy. No red flags. His partner that day was Charles Ellis Adams. Ensign. 38 years old. Navy vet for over a decade. Survived the USS Macon crash in 1935. That was a big airship disaster off the coast. Adams floated in the water for hours before rescue. Tough. Recently commissioned as an officer. This was his first flight in that role. A third man, James Riley Hill, a mechanic, climbed aboard at first, but Cody told him to get off. Too much weight, he said. Hill later testified the door wasn't latched right. Maybe a hint of what was coming. These were regular men, doing their job. But in wartime, even routine can turn strange. What if one small choice, like skipping a latch, changes everything? It's unsettling to consider. If this tale of wartime mystery grabs you, share your thoughts in the comments. What do you think happened to those men? August 16th, 1942. Early morning. Clear skies. L-8 lifts off at 6:03 a.m. from Treasure Island. Cody at the controls. Adams handling mechanics. The route? Out to the Farallon Islands, then north to Point Reyes, south to Montera, back through the Golden Gate. The blimp climbs slow. Helium keeps it buoyant. Engines hum quiet. They carry parachutes, life raft, radio, life jackets. Those Mae Wests they wore standard. Coffee in thermoses, sandwiches packed. Ready for the long haul. No issues at takeoff. Everything checks out. But up there, it's isolating. Just the two of them. The ocean below, vast, empty. You start to feel small, vulnerable. What thoughts run through their heads? Duty, home, or something darker? They head west, toward the Farallones, rocky islands about 27 miles out, known for rough seas, shark waters. The blimp cruises at maybe 40 knots, low altitude, scanning for periscopes, anything suspicious. Around 7 a.m. things are calm. No reports of trouble. A Liberty ship nearby. Fishing boats, too. Witnesses later said they saw the blimp circling low, maybe 30 feet above the waves. It's peaceful up there, but tense. Every shadow could be a sub. At 7:38 a.m., they radio base. Position 4 miles east of the Farallones. Suspicious oil slick. Coordinates 37 degrees, 48 minutes north. 123 degrees, 29 minutes west. They say they're investigating. The blimp drops low, circles the spot. Witnesses on the ship see it. They drop smoke flares, maybe, to mark it. One theory says they opened the hatch to deploy a marker, but here's the problem. Oil slicks could mean a submarine, leaking fuel, or just natural seep. In war you can't take chances. The tension builds, hearts race. What if it's real? What if they get too close? Last contact around 7:50 a.m. They report the slick again. Then, nothing. Radio goes quiet. Base tries to reach them. No answer. By 8:50 a.m., concern grows. Search planes go up. One spots L-8 at 2,000 feet. Higher than normal. Under clouds. Heading east. Toward land. What happened in those minutes? Did they see something? Hear something? The silence is chilling, like they just stopped. L-8 turns east, dumps ballast, climbs. Winds push it. It crosses the coast near Ocean Beach. Around 10:49 a.m., people spot it. Low now, sagging a bit. A plane flies close, sees no one in the gondola. The control car, door open, empty. On the beach, 2 fishermen grab the lines, peek inside. Nobody. They let go. It rises, hits a cliff, drops a depth charge on a golf course. No explosion, just falls. The blimp acts on its own, like it's haunted. What force guides it? Wind or something else? Now over San Francisco, scrapes rooftops, knocks power lines. People stare up. A woman on horseback says she sees 3 men, but others see none. It drifts south, over the Olympic Club, Mission Street. Crowds gather, sirens wail. The envelope deflates slow. Helium leaks from an open valve. Panic below, wonder above. Where are the men? Alive? Gone? The city holds its breath. 11:15 a.m. L-8 comes down on Bellevue Avenue, Daly City. Gentle crash. Envelope drapes over houses. Gondola in the street. Richard L. Johnston had just waxed his car. He runs out, sees the blimp. Police arrive. Navy too. They secure it. Look inside. No crew. Door latched open. Radio works. Engines fine. Ignition on. No damage. Like they stepped out mid-flight. One witness calls it a big broken wiener, but the eeriness hits hard. Empty. Abandoned. In the middle of suburbia. Investigators climb in. Parachutes there. 3 of them. Life raft intact. Classified papers safe. Machine gun loaded. 1 depth charge gone. The one on the golf course. Coffee still hot in thermoses. Sandwiches untouched. Briefcase with codes all there. But life jackets missing. They wore them. No signs of fight, no blood, no notes. The Navy seals it off, takes photos. But 1 civilian snap gets confiscated. Wartime secrets. What does it mean? Clues? Or just absence? Searches start right away. Planes, boats, Coast Guard. They comb the ocean, the slick area, beaches. Days go by. Nothing. No bodies, no jackets, no debris. Cody and Adams declared dead in 1943. Families left in limbo. Cody's fiancée, heartbroken. Adams' wife too. Early reports confuse things. False sightings. One says they landed safe, but that's not true. The Navy says accident. 1 man opens hatch to drop marker. Slips on slick. Falls. Other grabs him. Both go over. Blimp lightens. Climbs. Door unlatched. Dan Grossman, airship expert, doubts it. Says a Navy man wouldn't abandon ship. Would radio first. Don't give up the ship, he quotes. The motto. This is based on a Reddit post from r/unresolved mysteries. Users there talk fumes from the slick, disorientation, or fog messing with altimeter. Wilder ideas. Japanese sub captures them. They defect. Spy for enemy. Fight over a woman. Even aliens. 1 letter from Cody's mom. She saw him in Phoenix. Dazed. Amnesia maybe. But no proof. Or murder-suicide. Tension boils. One pushes the other. Reddit folks lean accident. Unsecured door. Weight shift. Simple mistake. But here's the unsettle. No bodies. No trace. In busy waters. L-8 gets fixed. Back in service. Post-war, Goodyear takes it. Renames America. Flies ads till 1982. Gondola, now in a museum. Pensacola. Static display. But the mystery stays. 83 years on. No closure. Books, podcasts, videos, still talked about. What if they survived? Washed up somewhere, new lives, or lost forever? Cases like this remind us, the sky holds secrets. War amplifies them. We search for reasons, but sometimes only echoes return. Think on your own vanishings, small ones, moments lost. Magnify that. Chilling, right? In the late 1940s, a radio message crackled across the Malacca Strait. A freighter named the SS Ourang Medan was in distress. The operator's words were chilling. All officers, including the captain, are dead. lying in chart room and bridge, possibly whole crew dead. A final transmission followed, a burst of Morse that ended with two unmistakable words: I die. When rescuers reached the ship, they would face one of the strangest maritime mysteries ever recorded. Some stories arrive on the tide already soaked in dread. The strait between Sumatra and Malaysia has always been busy. Tankers, fishing craft, liners sliding through humid haze. In June 1947, two American ships, the Silver Star among them, picked up an urgent SOS. Coordinates placed the sender somewhere near the shipping lanes west of Borneo. Radio operators struggled to maintain contact. The signal faded, then returned, fragments carried on unstable airwaves. Distress calls are supposed to be clear, but this one felt like it came from the edge of understanding. When the Silver Star arrived, the Ourang Medan floated calmly, no signs of battle or wreckage. Boarding parties climbed its side and stepped into silence. Bodies lay scattered across decks and corridors. Officers, engineers, sailors. All were on their backs, faces twisted toward the sun, arms outstretched, as if fending off an unseen threat. Even the ship's dog was frozen near the bridge. Before the Silver Star's crew could tow the freighter, smoke rose from its lower holds. The visitors scrambled off just in time. Flames tore through the hull, and moments later, the Ourang Medan exploded, vanishing beneath the waves. With it went every scrap of potential evidence: cargo lists, engine logs, maybe the answer to what destroyed its crew. With the ship gone, speculation filled the void. Some suggested leaking cargo, perhaps chemicals or gases that suffocated the crew and ignited the fire. Others imagined faulty boilers or an accidental release of carbon monoxide. But none of these ideas fully matched the strange detail of the frozen expressions described by rescuers. Panic leaves chaos, yet the decks had been eerily tidy. A riddle grows deeper when even disaster looks arranged. Post-war shipping often carried unlisted cargo. Rumors spread that the Ourang Medan might have been transporting hazardous materials, or worse, illegal weapons from leftover wartime stockpiles. A toxic leak could explain sudden death, but why had the ship been so secretive about its route and registry? No nation ever claimed ownership. The name never appeared on maritime rosters with certainty. Sailors, unwilling to accept mechanical failure alone, spun tales of darker origins. Accursed shipment, spectral attackers, even extraterrestrial contact. Some swore the legend felt older than the ship itself, as if the sea had rehearsed this story for centuries, waiting for another audience. Official investigations avoided such paths, but the myths clung stubbornly, moving from dockside bars to printed pamphlets. Survivors of the boarding party later gave brief statements. They agreed on key details. The crew was sprawled out, eyes wide, mouths open, limbs stiff. No wounds, no signs of struggle. One account described a look of terror that seemed almost sculpted into their faces. Another claimed the air felt heavy, suffocating, though no smoke was present yet. Researchers who tried to trace the Ourang Medan's origins ran into dead ends. No official registry matched the name. Shipping companies in Singapore, Jakarta, and Hong Kong denied any record of such a vessel. Even the SOS itself, reported in newspapers, appeared inconsistently across editions. Some skeptics argued the story was exaggerated, or even invented, by sensationalist publishers. But if it was only fiction, why did it leave such consistent ripples in maritime reports? By the 1950s, the tale had cemented itself in mystery anthologies and naval lore. Writers leaned into the strangeness, calling it the death ship of the Strait. Investigators, however, found themselves with no witnesses beyond the boarding crew, no wreckage, and no government willing to acknowledge involvement. A case with no evidence is barely a case at all, and yet the Ourang Medan kept returning in whispers. Modern researchers revisited the incident with fresh tools. Some pointed to methane or carbon monoxide from the ship's holds, others to nitroglycerin residue from wartime cargo. Poisonous fumes could have overwhelmed the crew, leaving them frozen mid-breath, and later sparked the explosion. But even this tidy theory couldn't answer why the Ourang Medan was so thoroughly unregistered, or why no fragment of its hull was later recovered. Over decades, sailors traded the tale in harbors from Penang to Manila. Each retelling added small details: phantom lights, an unearthly stench, the captain's last warning. Most were embellishments, but the core remained: a silent ship, a terrified crew, an inferno that swallowed all proof. For maritime workers, the story became less about death and more about the ocean's ability to hide entire histories. Today, the Ourang Medan drifts somewhere between history and folklore. Whether a toxic accident, a smuggler's disaster, or a fable spun from thin air, it endures because no one can prove or disprove it beyond doubt. Every time a vessel sends a faint SOS, listeners remember the chilling Morse: I die. That was the mystery of the SS Ourang Medan, a death ship that surfaced from nowhere and slipped back into the deep. If stories like this leave you thinking long after they end, subscribe and join me next time as we explore another case lost to shadows.